The night it all changed began like every other night, with a mop bucket squeaking down a marble hallway and a man who felt invisible to the world doing his best not to be. He was a single father, a janitor whose hands smelled of disinfectant and whose heart carried more weight than his body ever could. No one noticed him until one simple act of kindness, spoken without words, cracked open a destiny no one saw coming. Before the story pulls you deeper, pause for just a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of good people doing the right thing when no one is watching, please like this video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this live because people like you keep them alive. His name was Daniel Reyes, though most people at the towering glass headquarters downtown never bothered to learn it. He worked nights cleaning the corporate offices of one of the wealthiest families in the city, a family whose name lit up skylines and whose fortune could buy silence, loyalty, and anything else money touched. Daniel arrived after sunset and left before dawn, slipping through security doors like a ghost, pushing his cart past framed awards and polished floors that reflected a life he would never have. At home waited three small reasons he kept going. His children, triplets born the same year his wife died, the same year his life shattered and reshaped itself into something harder but strangely purer. Raising three children alone was a quiet war. Mornings were a blur of mismatched socks, half-packed lunches, and whispered prayers that he wouldn't get another call from the school about fees he couldn't pay yet. Nights were worse. After tucking them in, he studied their faces as they slept, wondering if love alone could cover the gaps left by absence and poverty. He never complained. He simply worked, learned, and adapted. Somewhere along the way, between exhaustion and resolve, Daniel taught himself sign language. One of his triplets, Mateo, had been born with partial hearing loss, and Daniel refused to let silence limit his son's world. He practiced late at night, fingers stiff, mind tired, heart determined. The building where Daniel worked was always cold even in summer, but one winter evening, the chill felt heavier. An elderly woman had been brought into the lobby earlier that day, escorted by aides and private security. She moved slowly, her silver hair neatly pinned, her posture dignified despite the weight of age. Daniel noticed her because she looked lost in a place designed to impress rather than comfort. He learned later that she was Eleanor Whitmore, the deaf mother of the billionaire CEO whose name sat at the top of every document in the building. Her visit was supposed to be brief, ceremonial, but something about the vast, echoing space unsettled her. As the hours passed and the building emptied, Eleanor remained seated near the lobby, her eyes drifting toward the elevators, then the doors, then back again. The aides had stepped away, distracted by calls and logistics, assuming the woman was fine. Daniel noticed her hands trembling slightly as the silence of the night pressed in. He hesitated. Janitors were meant to clean, not intrude, but empathy has a way of overriding fear. He set his mop aside and approached slowly, careful not to startle her. When he raised his hands and signed a gentle greeting, the world seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor's eyes widened, not in fear, but in astonishment. Someone had spoken to her in her language, unexpectedly, respectfully, without pity. Daniel's signs were not perfect, but they were sincere. He asked if she was comfortable, if she needed help, if she was waiting for someone. The woman's face softened, lines easing as relief washed over her. For the first time that day, she did not feel alone. What Daniel didn't know was that Eleanor's three adult grandchildren, the billionaire's triplets, were watching from a distance. They had returned unexpectedly, stepping into the lobby just as the exchange unfolded. Accustomed to rooms falling silent when they entered, they now stood frozen, speechless not because of awe or intimidation, but because a janitor had reached their grandmother in a way none of their wealth or status ever could. The sight unsettled something deep inside them. Over the following weeks, Eleanor requested to visit the building more often, citing nostalgia. In truth, she came to see Daniel. Their conversations, conducted in patient signs and shared smiles, grew longer. She learned about his children, about his late wife, about the way life had demanded everything from him and given little back except purpose. Daniel learned about her youth, her struggles growing up deaf in a world unwilling to slow down, her pride in her son's success tempered by loneliness at the top. Two souls from opposite ends of society found common ground in silence. The triplets noticed the change in their grandmother. She laughed more. She insisted on staying longer. She spoke, through writing and signing, of the janitor with warmth and respect. Curiosity turned into concern, then into quiet investigation. They learned Daniel's story, not through gossip, but through observation. They watched him work without cutting corners. They saw him leave early some nights, racing to parent-teacher meetings, and arrive exhausted but present the next evening. Slowly, admiration replaced suspicion. Daniel's life, however, did not become easier overnight. Bills piled up. One of the triplets fell ill, requiring treatment he could barely afford. He considered taking a second job, sleeping even less, burning himself down to the wick. Pride kept him from asking for help. He believed dignity meant enduring alone. What he didn't know was that Eleanor had already begun to move pieces behind the scenes, not with handouts, but with opportunity. One evening, Daniel was called into an office he had never cleaned before. Panic churned in his stomach. People like him were summoned only for reprimands or dismissal. Instead, he found the 3 Whitmore grandchildren waiting, their expressions serious but not unkind. They had learned sign language basics, clumsy but earnest, enough to thank him for what he had given their grandmother. They spoke of values, of leadership, of seeing what they had overlooked. They offered Daniel a chance, not charity, but a role in a new company initiative focused on accessibility and inclusion, drawing on his lived experience. The transition was terrifying. Daniel doubted himself daily. He was surrounded by people with degrees and polished confidence, while he carried calloused hands and a janitor's badge still tucked in his pocket like a talisman. But he learned fast. He listened harder. He advocated fiercely, not from theory but from truth. His ideas reshaped policies. His presence reminded rooms full of power that humanity was not a footnote. At home, the changes were subtle but profound. The triplets noticed the light returning to their father's eyes. They felt stability replacing constant tension. Mateo signed faster, prouder, seeing his father respected for the very skill that once marked them as different. Their small apartment filled with laughter again, the kind that comes from relief, not distraction. Eleanor lived long enough to see Daniel thrive. In her final months, she watched him present to boards, his hands steady, his voice clear. She passed knowing that kindness had outlived her, rippling outward through generations and systems once closed. When she was gone, the building felt colder again, but something permanent had shifted. Years later, Daniel still walked the lobby sometimes, not as a janitor, but as a leader who never forgot where he started. He greeted every cleaner by name. He taught sign language workshops after hours. He reminded his children daily that the smallest gestures could alter the course of a life. If this story has reached you, if it has stirred something soft and hopeful inside, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that goodness matters, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive and reaching hearts that need them. And before the ending fades, I have one special request. Comment the word kindness below if you believe simple compassion can still change the world. Because sometimes, all it takes is a tired father, a silent greeting, and the courage to see one another, not as titles or roles, but as human beings, to leave even billionaires speechless and the rest of us inspired.